طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير داع أنت شمس أنت بدر أنت نور على نور أنت مصباح الثريا يا حبيبي يا رسول طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
Welcome children, welcome everybody, welcome to our special program on reading stories from our Prophet's life to your ages, great lessons of wisdom to be heard at the tongue of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tonight I would like to share with you a story, an event which took place during our Prophet's life as he was sitting in his house teaching some of his friends, some of his companions about Allah and our beautiful religion Islam. One day, a poor man came to see the blessed Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. The poor man was hoping to get some food, as he didn't have any proper food for days. But on that day, it so happened that there was no food either in the blessed Prophet's house. And in fact, there were many times when the blessed Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and his pure family went without having any proper meal for several days. But as I said, the blessed Prophet on this occasion was not alone when the poor man came to his house. He was sitting with a group of other Muslims, his friends, his companions, his Sahaba. So the blessed Prophet decided to ask one of these people to take the poor man who came to him to their house and to give him something to eat. So the blessed Prophet asked, "Who will invite this poor man to dinner? Which one of you is going to invite this man to dinner?" But no one replied. Everyone, for some reason, kept silent. So the blessed Prophet Muhammad asked the same question again. But again, no one responded. Then suddenly one man from the group stepped forward. His name was Abu Talha. "I will invite this man to dinner, O the Prophet of Allah," Abu Talha said. "I will take care of him, O the Messenger of God." Then Abu Talha turned to the poor man and he welcomed him. "Be my guest for tonight, O my beloved brother." The poor man, very pleased and happy, he accepted Abu Talha's kind invitation. So the two men left the Prophet Muhammad's house and they walked together through the streets of Medina until they arrived at Abu Talha's house. Abu Talha's wife met them and she learned from her husband that this poor man was to be a guest of theirs at their table on that night. Abu Talha, as usual, expected his wife to smile and greet their guest, greet the man, the poor man. But instead, Abu Talha's wife looked quite worried. So she took her husband aside and she said to him, "O Abu Talha, what am I to do? What have you put me in?" Abu Talha was surprised, confused and puzzled. "What is the matter, my dear wife?" he asked her. "Is anything wrong? Did anything happen while I was away?" Abu Talha's wife took her husband even further away to a quiet corner of the room, where their guests could not hear what they were talking about, what they were saying. And she told her husband, "Oh, my dear husband, this is now a bit embarrassing. Indeed, I would gladly give food, welcome this man, and give food to this man you have brought with you to our house. But unfortunately, I have only enough food in the house for our own children, and this puts us in great difficulty, and that's why I'm worried." "It certainly does," agreed Abu Talha. "Oh, I didn't know about that. So what are we going to do?" he asked. "I have given my promise to this brother of ours to be a host to him tonight and to feed him some food." So Abu Talha thought for a while. And then an idea came to his mind. He had an idea. It was a rather clever one, as you will hear. He told his wife, "Okay, this is the plan. Please send our children to bed," he told his wife, "and send them to bed right now, straight away." His wife replied, "But what about their meal? They didn't have any food. They haven't eaten yet." "Never mind about that. Just please send them to bed," her husband insisted. "They can go without eating for one night. They can go to bed without eating now. They can eat maybe after our guest is gone." Then Abu Talha told her what she was to do exactly with the meal they were going to give the guest. Abu Talha's wife did as her husband told her. She sent their children to bed and then set about preparing what little food she had. Then Abu Talha called his guests to the table, and they all sat down to eat, or at least so thought the guest. As Abu Talha's wife sat down, she said, "I don't think we need to have the lamp on this table burning so brightly. I'll turn it a bit down. Isn't it more pleasant to eat when the light is dim?" Abu Talha smiled to himself when he heard this. His wife was giving a very good performance indeed. She was doing exactly as Abu Talha had instructed her to do. She turned the lamp down so low, in fact, that the flame was almost out, and it was rather difficult for the guest to see his hosts at all. But this is just what Abu Talha wanted. It's exactly what they wanted. Abu Talha's wife served the food to the guest, and then fussed about with a plate for her husband and one for herself. But when the meal began, only one of the three people at the table was actually eating. Can you guess who this was? Of course, it was their guest. It was the guest. Abu Talha's wife had given the guest all the food she had in the house, or the food that she was going to give to her husband and for herself. Instead, the two of them, the husband and the wife, sat in the dim room, and they moved their hands from their plates towards their mouths, pretending to be eating. But the guest, being so hungry himself, and the room being quite dark, he did not realize what was happening, because it was too dark in the room and he couldn't see properly. If he had known what was going on, the guest might have felt embarrassed. And Abu Talha and his wife didn't want a guest in their house to feel that way. This had been Abu Talha's plan, and it worked perfectly. The guest finished his meal, and for the first time in many days, he did not feel hungry. He was a very happy man when he left Abu Talha's house, and he prayed for his hosts. He blessed his host for his kindness and his wife's good cooking. He praised the food so much, and he enjoyed it. He said the food was truly delicious. The day after this happened, Abu Talha visited the Blessed Prophet's house. The Blessed Prophet, the next day he came to visit Abu Talha's house. When the Prophet came to Abu Talha's house, he greeted him, his wife and children very warmly. The Prophet was so happy. You could clearly see that on his face. Talha, said the Blessed Prophet, I bring you the good news. I give you the glad tidings that Allah Almighty is very pleased, happy with your good deed that you did last night. And in fact, an angel came to me and revealed a verse of the Holy Quran in relation to what you did, by describing you as being one of those who prefers to sacrifice his own needs for the sake of others. A verse from the Holy Quran was revealed after this beautiful event, this incident, and will remain therein in the Holy Book until the Day of Judgment. This is the end of our tonight's story. But before we leave this session, please allow me to share with you some of the lessons that we learned from this cute story. Hopefully one day you will be able to sit all around us here in our beautiful Masjid, Mosque, Cambridge Central Mosque, and you directly could intercept my story and ask me questions. Or later on you could tell me some of the lessons that you concluded from this or any other story. But tonight, I would like to ask you, myself, and I hope you would, all those of you who are watching us right now, nod at least with your heads to say that you agree that those are indeed the points that we learned from this story. Dear children, listening to this story taught us another episode or chapter or moment from our beloved Prophet's life. Wouldn't you agree that we found out something about our Prophet, how he was teaching his friends, his companions about our beautiful religion of Islam, how he would host people in his house, and how he always asked his friends to help one another. So we learned something from the Prophet's life. We also learned from this story about some of his companions' lives, about their families, about their households, and what they were doing and what they were eating and how did they interact with one another. So we learned about caring and sharing. This story tells us about kindness towards other human beings. Being kind and hospitable is our Prophet's way. And every Muslim should be in that way. So the story teaches us hospitality, teaches us to be hospitable towards our guests. This story also told us about how clever our beloved Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was, and some of his companions were. Like who? The main maybe character of this story, Abu Talha and his wife. They were so clever. Abu Talha came with this amazing clever idea that they can just dim the light in their room and the guest would think that everyone is enjoying sharing a meal, but because they didn't have enough food, it was just enough for him to eat properly, and maybe some of the food was left for the children that will be woken up to eat, or maybe next morning they will feed them the food that was left in the house. So we understand from this story that it is important to use our intelligence, to be smart and clever at all times, especially when we happen to be in a tricky situation like this one. Abu Talha, because of his kindness and generosity and what our religion says about treating our fellow Muslim brothers and sisters with kindness and benevolence, and treating our guests with kindness and benevolence, he invited him over to have a meal with his family. But when his wife told him that they didn't have enough food for everyone, he managed to come up with a very clever idea. And in a way, we understand that he never embarrassed his guest. His guest was fed. The objective was achieved. And what else? Allah honored him and his wife and his whole family by sending an angel to his beloved Prophet Muhammad and revealing a verse from the Holy Quran talking about their great deed and great idea that he had in feeding his guest on the night. What else did we learn from this story? Did not this story teach us also to be humble? Our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was the most humble of all people. And he always tried his very best to pass on this very beautiful and important trait, quality, onto his companions. So in this story we learn the man was humble, the Prophet was humble, but of course Abu Talha and his wife were humble too. In fact, when Abu Talha came up with this clever idea, he was not so proud of himself. Look, I've solved the situation and I'll take all the credit myself. Not like that. He was very humbled that Allah inspired him to come to such a clever conclusion. And even when the Prophet visited him and his family the next day, he didn't grow in pride and arrogance. Oh, a verse of the Quran was revealed praising me and my family and what we did and the way we treated our guests last night. Unbelievable. I'm the man of the city, of the town. Not like that. He remained being humble, and he gave all the credit to Allah and his messenger for the good deeds that they performed. So being humble is important, and this story teaches us about it. Maybe, arguably the most important lesson that we learn from this story is to sacrifice our own needs for the sake of others. This is a difficult one, my dear children. You might have a lollipop and you only have one. And if I were to ask you, can you please give it to me or give it to that other child that just walked into your room, you might feel selfish a bit and not want to share it because you feel it's your own thing, and especially if it's something like the very little food that you have, the only little sandwich that your mom packed for you and you are going on some hiking or some trip, that tiny bit of food, and you know for hours and hours you can't reach home or any place where you can buy some more food to eat, and you do feel so hungry. But a beggar comes by or a poor person comes by and says, oh, you had your breakfast this morning, but I didn't eat anything proper for a couple of days. All I had was some plain water and maybe a couple of leaves here and there. Leaves, can you believe it? Yeah, would you give your last bit of sandwich to this poor man who asked you for it? Would you make such sacrifice and put other people before your own self? That's exactly what Abu Talha and his wife did, and even their children. Allah, of course, helped them, gave them enough energy and strength to go to sleep on that evening before they had their evening meal. But they all put their guest before themselves. And this is the huge lesson that we learn from this wonderful story. It was so nice and impressive that Allah was so pleased, and as I said, He revealed the verse of the Quran, and He told us in a couple of places in the Holy Quran that this notion of preferring other people over our own needs is so big. It seems that every time we do something like this, it doesn't go unnoted with Allah and His angels. Instead, Allah commands His angels to praise us, to send salutations upon us, to bless us, to pray for us, just because we preferred someone else over our own needs. Of course, dear children, it could be your older or younger sibling as well, your older or younger brother or sister. It could be your parents. It could be the grandparents prefer their grandchildren, but it could be grandchildren giving preference to their grandparents as well. As long as we sacrifice things of our own needs for the sake of others, we will qualify to be such great people like Abu Talha and his beloved wife. But what else did we learn from this story? We also learned from this story that parents need to look after their children. Anyone who is teaching children needs to take care of them. Children were mentioned in this story. And Abu Talha's wife was so worried about them, and she didn't want to cause any discomfort to them. So looking after children is equally and very important in our religion, Islam. And children must feel safe and happy at all times when they are with their parents, when other people come to visit them in their house, at all times in school with their teachers, when they go to their local mosque. At all times they need to feel safe and happy, and they need to be looked after. We, of course, learned from this story that honoring our guests is part of our faith and our religion. Islam says, in fact, that anyone who comes to visit us to our house, it becomes our duty as their host to look after them for at least 3 days and nights. Beyond that is optional. But look how beautiful our religion is. And I remember in our Mevlid program, one of the speakers said, you will hardly go anywhere in the Muslim world and knock in any house that is owned by a Muslim family, and that you came to them, that they will not offer you something to eat and drink. And in most cultures, actually, in the Middle East, in Turkey, and in the Balkans where I come from, and even in Africa, like Nigeria, you're not going to leave any Muslim's house until they have fed you very nicely and given you lots of lovely things to taste and have. Of course, if they have them. And most people, alhamdulillah, praises be to Allah, we all have plenty of food to eat and lovely drinks to drink as well. So honoring our guests is part of our identity, our Islamic culture, and of course part of our religious teachings and ethics. And finally, this is the last lesson I deducted. I could have obviously deducted many more lessons, to be honest with you, from such a lovely and inspiring story. But to conclude this little session of tonight, because we have other things to do as well, and I know you all have to, is about sharing the good news. What was the conclusion of this beautiful story? Did we not read that the blessed Prophet, our beloved Prophet Muhammad, as soon as angel Jibreel came to him and informed him that Allah is so pleased with Abu Talha and his wife and that family and the way they treated their guests the last night? Did he not rush the next morning, the next day, to go and visit Abu Talha, he himself? Indeed he did. He came around his house with a very happy, smiley face, and he greeted Abu Talha and his family very warmly, very nicely. And Abu Talha could see the Prophet seems very happy and pleased. And indeed he was, because angel came and revealed to him that Allah was pleased with some of his friends and companions and the way they treated that poor man, who too was of course pleased and happy and prayed for his hosts and the Blessed Prophet and the Muslims who lived in Medina at that time. So sharing the good news is a very important aspect of our religion. Every time you hear about something that a friend of yours has done which is very good, or something that you know which is very positive and good, glad tiding that concerns someone in your household or in your community or in your school or company or wherever you happen to be, always try to share the good news with that person. The sooner you narrate and inform them of the good news, more reward will you have, and will they become happy sooner rather than later. So, my dear children, I hope you have enjoyed tonight's story. I hope you have understood tonight's story. I give you a little homework task. Please re-narrate this beautiful story to your parents if they were not listening to us right now. Retell this story to any of your friends whom you may meet tomorrow or tonight or any coming day. Try to narrate the story and learn the story. Even yourself, you might go through it tonight before you go to sleep. Think about it. What was the story about? Who were the main characters? What was happening exactly? Who was being fed? Where and who went where? All these things are very important. And of course, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we too become caring and share things with other people. And that we too become hospitable, kind, good people, good to our guests, and good to everyone that we meet and interact with. We of course want to also sacrifice some of our own needs and put other people before us, in front of us, which means we don't want to be selfish. We actually want to be caring and sharing, as I said. And of course, let's be of those people who will spread the good news whenever we hear it and whenever it comes our way. And we don't want to be of those people who sadden other people and tell them sad stories and some sad news. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you and your families. I give you a very long and happy lives. And I look forward to sharing another story with you in a few days' time here from Cambridge Central Mosque. From myself, Imam Sejad, my colleague Imam Ali Tos, and our admins, a very good evening. Barakallahu fikum, masa'ul khair inshallah. And we ask for all the blessings upon you and your families. Barakallahu fikum wal afu minkum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuhu. Ila al-liqa.